Welcome to the first ever St. Declan's Future Leaders podcast. I'm James Harney. Today, joining me will be Ryan Hennessy and Mr. Briggs, special guest. We'll be talking about the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. I'd also like you to hit that like button and subscribe. First, we'll talk about the new club structure with COVID obviously being prevalent in Ireland. And all three of us have had clubs involved with finals and whatnot in sports and GA. So, Mr. Briggs, you're obviously in the county senior football final with your own club, Balnacorty. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it and how the preparations are going?
Yeah, they were going fine, James, until I suppose the GA lockdown and everything again. But the club has been great this year because we've got a sustained effort in both hurling and football. You had like your 6 or 7 weeks of hurling, which is great. There's no overlap. And then you had your few weeks of football, no overlap again. You also had full access to your county players. And I think for talking to most people in the street, they loved the fact that the club was given precedence this year and they had access to the players. And it was very exciting. And I suppose from another point of view was, between Rua TV and another lot of stream games, personally, I watched a huge amount of junior football, junior hurling, intermediate. Games were on YouTube, etc. And it was great to see so many games over that lockdown. So, I think it's been great. Just the one good thing about COVID, it has really enhanced the club game. What do you think, Ryan?
So, it was the first everyone out. Some people, it was good though. Any injuries got to take a few months rest. And that was back better than ever. So, gave every club a good chance having county players in both offices.
I suppose I will talk a little bit about the county final between the two clubs you're involved in, Ryan with Rathcormac and Mr. Briggs with Balnacorty. And Ryan, what's it been from your side of the camp in Rathcormac?
Junior stage, both had decided Balnacorty and Rathcormac. They just played through group games, to be honest. Didn't really see Rathcormac looking like losing any game in any group game. So it's nice to be back in county final second year in a row. Be a tight game though, so see how it goes.
Mr. Briggs might say otherwise though.
I agree with Ryan that both teams kind of flew through the championship. What was obvious was both teams had the best panel. And I know obviously I kind of shipped a couple of injuries, or Balnacorty shipped a couple of injuries with Conor Prunty and Neil Montgomery, but when you look at, I suppose, by pure population where we're from, some outstanding players on the bench that will make most other teams in the county. So, what was Rathcormac coming next? Outstanding panel, I suppose. Now with the game going to November, we're hoping that Prunty and Montgomery will get a chance to get back, not just play for Waterford, but then for the club as well, because you never want to see any player miss a county final through injury. So it's definitely tight. The one thing I think is funny that, like last year, I suppose Balnacorty were probably favourites and Rathcormac, blew them out of the water. And then a year later now, Rathcormac were favourites, but Balnacorty are coming and they're building the long grass with that hunger. So it's going to be very interesting. Very hard to put two champions back to back, which we'll kind of talk about later on when it comes to Tipperary. So it's all to play for, definitely, James.
I suppose it'd be fairly stupid now to ask your predictions. So I suppose we'll head into the Munster Senior Hurling Championship with the first fixture being the 25th of October with Limerick playing Clare and Thurles. So I suppose we'll talk a little bit about Limerick and the unstoppable force they are really. So I want to know what your take on it is, the match.
You feel Limerick are going to win it. Like their panel, everything, just the size of the units they have. Like, can't really see them losing against Clare. So I say Limerick to win it.
Nah.
Yeah, in fairness, both teams had a great league campaign. It would have been interesting to see where they gone from there. But as Ryan said, Clare now are down Podge Collins, they're down John Collin with crucial injury. They're now down Colin Galvin. No matter how well they're going in the league, and Waterford are going in the league, there's no way you can look past Limerick. I mean, seeing the Piercek absolutely dismantle, doing in the county final, and there's 4 or 5 lads who weren't even near the Limerick panel on that team, and you're going, the incredible talent they have. Your man Dempsey may or may not be there to start for Limerick. He's an unbelievable hurler.
The mixture they have as well, like big players, but good hurling all the same.
Phenomenal. I think, like, with all due respect to Tipperary, thought they got very lucky last year in peace. Like, Kilkenny are the only team I can see matching Limerick. And I suppose only for that dubious 65, non-65 at the end, where Kilkenny won. And then, of course, Richie Hogan gets sent off a ridiculous red card in the first, 10 minutes of the final. Coupled with Wexford just blowing up in that semi-final. Like, I would consider Limerick to be the best hurling team and panel in the country. And I just cannot see anyone beating them. Well, I certainly can't see Clare beating them in the first round. But look, stranger things have happened. But without home advantage for any of the teams this year, pure neutral, I can't see Limerick being beaten in that game.
Yeah. Clare's main force is Tony Kelly, which if he's not motoring, they don't work. Like, see Shane O'Donnell scoring a fair bit now, maybe getting the run on the now since Sean Finn's injured, or since Richie English's injury. I can see Shane O'Donnell might be able to score a bit, but I'd say it'd be the same now with G saying Limerick to win by a good few. And the next match is on the 31st of October, Cork versus Waterford and Thurles, our own team. And I'll let you talk first now, what you think on the way it's going to go.
It's going to be tough to get Waterford, really. I can see, as much as I don't like to say it, I can see Cork beating Waterford. You wouldn't know at the same time. They played in the Munster League on Fraher back in about January. Cork just blitzed them. Completely different panel, but still, you just don't see Waterford with the hurlers or just not the experience or anything to beat Cork, not in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, look, Waterford had a very good league campaign. New manager, obviously, there's huge amount of work gone in. A huge turnover of players in the last while as well, new panel members. Just having watched a lot of the Cork Championship there on irishexaminer.com, like, again, Cork have a wealth of talent coming up, underage. No, Blackrock winning after, how many years, maybe 20 odd years. It's great for the county. I look at Waterford and I see our own club championships. I think, and then you're wondering, like, is the level there? Can we find new players? Like, the big thing for me is the progression. Like, could Cork make a big progression for the National League? And the answer is yes. Could Limerick tip? Yes. Can Waterford progress that extra 10% to get up to the level? And that's a big if for me. Like, Prunty having or not been available the last few weeks, that's huge, because we all know the troubles that Waterford have had a full back in the last, a number of years to have to play sweepers.
Especially when there's Patrick Horgan in full forward for Cork.
Exactly, and if you don't have Patrick Horgan, you have Alan Cadigan. Or if you don't have Cadigan, then you have numerous other forwards. Seamus Harnedy, sorry, my fault. Seamus Harnedy, like, big player again for them, captain of Cork. The only thing I'll say about Waterford is I saw them there playing last week, and they played Kilkenny, and their system is quite good. And Cork want to play an open brand of hurling. And how is that going to go, at the end of October, start of November? Pitches should still be good. I mean, Thurles and Cork, Thurles this game will be decent in November, but like, the wind, the conditions will suit Cork. That's a variable. But like, at the same time, when I look at the panel that Cork have, and I look at the players they have, and how they've been on the road now a while, and Kingston is back as manager, I'm kind of edging towards them. What do you think?
I think Cork now as well. Like, even if their full forward line isn't going well, they've just given midfield, Coleman wing back, two players that can score from anywhere as well. Two young players, like, they have pace, fitness on their side, so you can't really see Waterford beating them, in my opinion.
Yeah, like, I mean, Jamie Barron's going to be a huge player for Waterford. He always is. And, you're relying on that one extra, maybe Kevin Moore, he's not always at the twilight, but he's still a very important player for Waterford. You have the Manny, or Pádraig Manny. I know his brother's gone now.
I have to see how Ozzie Gleeson goes too.
Huge thing. If Ozzie Gleeson gets motoring, there was glimpses of it in the club championship.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff he did was exceptional. But he needed sustained effort from him, because, as you said, Darrell Fitzgibbon is capable of scoring 3-4 points. Coleman's scoring 3-4 points, wing back even, and there's a huge spread of scores around Cork. So can we hold him? We can, but like, it's going to take some effort. And the worrying thing is, I would put Cork behind Tipp and Limerick.
You need a lot of discipline as well against Cork. Like, Horgan on the freeze, going to knock over every single one, so you need discipline as well.
Like, I mean, look,
and how do you feel about a lot of the comments saying that Cork are a bit spineless today? You don't really know how to dog it, if you will.
no, you're absolutely right. I know Joel Logue has taken exception to that on Sunday game. Look, if you watch the Cork Hurling Championship, it is as tough as you'll find anywhere. And sometimes they have been. But like, would you prefer that they got dogged and down in the dirt at the expense of their skill? So they can do both, but it just suits them to play ever since Donald Gray that running style, off the shoulder, expansive hurling. And sometimes you have to sacrifice that small bit of physicality. Like, I wouldn't call them, they're not yellow, they're not weak, they have big players. If they can find a bit more of a balance between physicality and hurling, I think they would go a lot further. That's why they have struggled to become, say, a final team as opposed to a semi-final.
And I suppose with Ballygunner basically walking through the Waterford Championship, it doesn't really help the quality of hurling and the preparation for the county hurlers, and with many of them being from Ballygunner.
Yeah, and look, and Waterford will need Desi Hutchinson to be a big player, and like, has Desi Hutchinson had that type of scrutiny from Markle? You mentioned Richie English there, but like, you have Tom Condon, like, you have Casey at fullback, like, they're super hurlers. So like, I mean, will we get enough ball into Desi, the traditional corner forward that we haven't had since probably Paul Finn and John Milan, you know, to that extent. If you can get him enough ball, he's incredibly dangerous, one of the best hurlers in the country. If they don't, in that kind of poor weather, like, it's hard to see Waterford win.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Tipp, but we won't talk about the fixture yet because we don't know, but we all think it'll be Limerick anyway. So Tipp and Limerick more than likely on the 1st November. How do we find that going? How do we see it going?
Well, I think Tipp have some phenomenal hurlers. Again, I think they got a bit lucky last year, but you need a certain amount of luck to win the All-Ireland. They got an extraordinary amount of luck, in my opinion. My only worry was last year their final kick for a few of them? Do they have one more year? Now, I never write off the likes of Brendan Maher, Pádraig Maher, you know, Shamey up top, they're full forward, Cannon. But like, they're coming to the wrong age on profile of an inter-county team now. You see Limerick, they're younger, they're hungrier. It's very hard to keep going back year on year. The one thing I will say though is, because the championship is now condensed into only a few weeks, maybe it's not as important as maybe a 9 or 10 month campaign. But there's big question marks for me over a lot of their players. They're the wrong side of 30 or just before us. Can they sustain the effort of week upon week upon week? And we see last year in the Munster Championship where they won their first 3 games and they got absolutely blown away by Limerick, you know, in the Munster final a week later. And, you know, if it comes down between Limerick and Tipp, I know who my money's on. What about you, Roy?
I'm calling Limerick now as well, as Shane said. Like, as Tipp like, all the wrong age, wrong side 30. I can just see Limerick's physicality, fitness will suit them more, especially if the conditions are bad. They can just dog it, but they also have good hurling as well. So I'll be calling Limerick to win it.
Yeah, and you could say that Tipp might suffer from a bit of second-year syndrome after just winning the All-Ireland, which controversially Richie Hogan being sent off, but a lot of different opinions on that. Could I get years?
Well, definitely for me, ridiculous decision. I mean, look, I suppose by letter of the rule book, you know, make contact with the head, but like, there's no malice in it whatsoever. It rules the game. Like, you know, every person loves hurling. They want toughness, they want hardness within the rules. I saw no reason to be sent off. And like I said, you know, a lot of people said at the time that, you know, Tipp would have won the game anyway. There was a point in it at the time that Kilkenny were up by a point, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you know, how you could come up with that statement, especially knowing Kilkenny's will in the second half of games when, you know, if they're so hard to beat, you know, to me, that's a ridiculous statement to make. Yeah, Tipp, serious hurler, but like, when you have a team like Tipp, if you 14 men, it's almost nigh impossible because they can put the ball in their back pocket if they want, you know, if they have time and space, extra man down. You know, I think Tipp, everyone Tipp's way, she's a great manager, Eamon O'Shea, phenomenal coach, no doubt about it. But to me, like, I just think, you know, that the time has come. They've won their All-Irelands. I think the hungrier Limerick team are going to prevail.
I thought Richie was very hard to do, but still did see Tipp win it last year. Like, I don't know, just a lot of strong hurlers from wing back, full back, centre back, full forward as it went going every championship game last year. So he was kind of an unstoppable force in there full forward. Tipp a lot of youth coming up as well. Like was it last year they won the under 20?
Well, last 2 years, they go for 3 in a row.
3 in a row, go for 3 in a row under 20 hurling. So there's a fair chance, like a lot of youth coming up.
It was nose playing against Wexford as well, where they sprung 3 or 4 of those lads. Jake Morris included off the bench, and were able to pull away. But I still think, you're talking about that's their bench, but then Limerick can bring on, 4 or 5 lads who are already, they're not developing players, they're developed and they're ready to go off the bench. And the competition with places must be insane up in.
Half of Limerick's power will just walk onto any club team.
Yeah, and we're probably guilty of building up here now, and we'll definitely lose against Clare. And even with the back door, unlike the back door, and say there's no back door in football, like where there's a second chance, I just don't see Limerick, giving up 2 losses in a championship season. And like I said, the only team I can see beaten is Kilkenny for that reason. And I do Kilkenny have the bench players to sustain that effort. Because remember, a lot of these players as well would have played sustained over the last number of weeks. They're going to have shoved in a huge amount of training over, the last number of weeks, straight in the championship, week upon week upon week. Okay, there's a small gap between the Munster final. And that's where I think Limerick get the panel to deal with this. I'm not sure Tipp do, and you see it last year when Colin Barrett got injured. He's such a vital player for them, man marking. When he was gone, they got absolutely blitzed in that Munster final. And when he came back then for the semi-final, he makes a huge difference. And I don't think for a top team should one player make that difference if it's a cornerback. Look, if it's Ozzie Gleeson, if it's Paul Manning, you'd say Jamie Barron, you'd say, okay, fair enough. But for a cornerback to make that much difference, and then in the final, there was balls being smashed down on top of Heffron and Ron Mara, and they were just cleaning it up all day. Limerick, they'll have Gillan, they'll have Casey, they'll have Graham Mulcahy. And if they're not going well, they have another 2 or 3 lads, Pat Ryan, Dempsey to come off the bench. Hegarty, yeah, if you want. Like Flanagan there, he didn't even start the All-Ireland final, so.
But say he's nearly gone past it now,
He's probably only 24, past it, all right, yeah. But definitely, I just don't. To me, there's only one winner.
From Munster.
I'd be inclined to agree with you now. I didn't think myself that Richie Hogan sending off was right either, but I'd say Limerick with maybe if Kilkenny were able to beat him, I could say now repeat him. Last year's All-Ireland. I would favour, funnily enough now, I think Cork are able to play Limerick. I don't know, there's something about them that kind of gels well. Like they're able to always put it up to Limerick. They've never had a hammering as if Waterford would have, or if Tipp would have for some strange reason. But I'll be agreeing with you now that I think Limerick will win it in the end.
But it is a strange. I suppose the same boxing that styles make fights. It's the same here. Look, Limerick wouldn't have won the All-Ireland a couple of years ago, only for the goalkeeper came out and made a kind of a last-ditch, unbelievable save block. And Cork had so many chances that day to win that game as well. And you're probably right that Cork will put it up to Limerick, but I still don't think. To me, Kilkenny are the only team that can physically dominate.
I think probably
Again, lack of a panel in my view. They're so over reliant when things go against them on Joe Cannon and then Conor Whelan. You have 2 players. The rest of the players, Cooley was phenomenal 3 years ago. And he hasn't took the ball since, really, at that level. So, to me, Galway, new manager might freshen up a small bit, and talking the overall picture. But, to me, it's Kilkenny and Limerick. And, hopefully, you'd love to see the draw go away that they don't meet in the final. But again, would you be surprised to see Kilkenny take out Limerick and then Cork or Tipp or Waterford take out Kilkenny in the final? No, I wouldn't. It's very evenly balanced.
Yeah. And we haven't talked about Wexford at all, funnily enough, as if they have any shout or how we see them going.
Davy definitely pulled the greatest stroke of all time. They were the first team to have their county final played. Right? Okay, a few of them were playing football, but I can guarantee you they were back training. They were just probably playing the matches. They were back training with Wexford. this has a kind of a feeling, even though Davy said he was coming back again for another couple of years, this has the feeling of the very last year of Davy. And mentioned to me, how much can you keep asking those lads to go to the well? They're definitely dangerous, especially with that bit more extra training done. I kind of fancy them to win Leinster, but I give Kilkenny a greater shout to win the All-Ireland, if that makes sense.
Same as last year. What Wexford won the Leinster last year, then Kilkenny nearly won All-Ireland. So hard to know.
I'm going to ask you now for an All-Star prediction. Who you think will win the All-Stars this year?
Well, let's go Player of the Year.
Yeah, Player of the Year.
Well, obviously it'll depend on who's going to be in the All-Ireland final, but again, like, it's very hard to look past a couple of usual suspects. TJ, he's just been phenomenal for the last 10 years. Like, if it was Limerick, I fancy, I know Lynch there got the last one, but like the likes of, it's always someone like the likes of Graham O'Callaghan is so consistent. The likes of Hegarty is so consistent. Kyle Hayes, and like maybe sometimes their consistency goes against them because they're always an 8 out of 10. When the Player of the Year, it comes, you're looking for that extra bit. Someone, I fact, the way Limerick play, someone like Jeremy Burns is an outside shot for me. Like scoring 2 points a game, steady, big, strong, inspirational. So if I was a betting man there now, which I'm not, but if I was, I'd put the old tenner on him.
No, I'd call it Keane Lynch, Kyle Hayes for Limerick. Could see Patrick Hogan once again for Cork. As Shane said, TJ Reid just unstoppable, like, for Kilkenny centre forward. So don't know really who to put my money on. How about you, James?
I'm nearly thinking someone on maybe a Kilkenny team. Someone, I don't know. I'd be inclined to say TJ Reid, but I'd say I would be surprised if Colin Fennelly isn't around it again, or Seamus Callan with his goal a game last year. You couldn't really look past him either. So I'd be inclined to say I'd nearly stick, if I was a betting man myself, sir. I'd probably put money on TJ Reid winning it.
Look, it usually comes from the winner on this, especially there's less games this year as well, so therefore they won't get as much exposure. So it's the old championship now, so like it probably will come from one of the 2 finalists, as opposed to the last couple of years where lads had a lot more games and had a better shot on it. So you have to be on it every single week. You have to be mentally tough, strong, ready to go every single week. And again, it comes down to us. If you're not performing for Limerick, they have 15 other guys I feel that can step up. I'm not too sure that if Shane Callan wasn't going well for Tipp every week, I still think he'd be in the team every week. Whereas, if Graham O'Callaghan wasn't performing every week for Limerick, I don't think he would be. Kyle Hayes again. So that's what, again, look, I suppose that's probably my justification for seeing a Limerick All-Ireland win.
That's what keeps driving on Limerick as well. Like, they have to keep up their game every day. So they know if they're not at the standard, they're going to be whipped off. Keeps them going.
Before we go, I'd just like to thank my guests, and especially you, for joining us today. Once again, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Over the next number of weeks and months, we will have a huge variety of shows on the channel, with new special guests, some featuring from Waterford, maybe some even further. We hope to see you tune in. Bye for now.